So do any of you out there have an odd hobby, something that you collect or something that you do, kind of strange habit? We are about to dive in. You're not going to believe how many, strange as it seems, cartoons were done off of hobbies, odd hobbies. This is literally, I'm going to show it to you physically. This is how many files that my family collected of people, eccentrics and all this from the 1930s through the 1960s that had odd hobbies. It's incredible. I've been kind of looking at this stack of files for a long time, almost intimidated by it, really, wondering how am I ever going to tackle this? And finally, I just decided, you know what? Let's dive in. The first folder that we'll tackle today is Odd Hobbies, the scrapbook. So there's about 5 times that John Hix collected these into, it was a comic strip that he ran on Sundays called the John Hix Scrapbook. So we'll start off with those, which are most likely kind of a greatest hits, but we have literally ahead of us Hobbies collections, Hobbies miniatures and models, Hobbies needlecraft, Hobbies whittling and carving, all the way to Hobbies with animals and Hobbies miscellaneous. This is going to take me weeks, I think, to get through, but I've just been decided to tackle this. One of the great things about this comic strip to me, and I always found when I went back through these archives, is the eccentric people that John Hix discovered. Ernest Hix after him, my grandma Elsie Hix, and even my parents into the late 1960s. Just a lot of eccentric, odd people out there, especially during this time. And I think, as you think about it, how much time and effort and dedication people put in. And it always astonishes me that I wonder if their families even remember them or whatever happened to these collections. One of the really cool things about bringing this comic strip back to the digital age is I've discovered in several of the comments people who say, hey, that's my grandfather, or other people have reached out and said, hey, my great grandfather was in a Strange as It Seems comic back in such and such a date. I don't have all the archives scanned in. It's going to take me at least another decade, if not longer. I mean, just based on hobbies alone, you can see how much material. I think at one point, my grandmother estimated there was over 50,000 facts in the Strange as It Seems archive. So tons more to go through. But if your grandfather or grandmother or great uncle or anybody shows up in these comic strips, please reach out, or I would love to hear if you or your relatives have also done some odd hobbies or collections or so on, because this is just, we're in for a real treat here over the next few weeks as we go into odd hobbies. Let's go. And before I dive in, please take a moment and hit the bells down below. Hit the bell to subscribe, to follow, hit the bell to like. Would love to hear comments, any reflections, any observations, odd hobbies that you've done yourself. The engagement goes a long way to helping me bring this iconic Strange as It Seems brand back for the digital age. Welcome back. This is Jeff Hix, curator of the Strange as It Seems archives and grandnephew of John Hix, who created Strange as It Seems back in the late 1920s. So for this episode, we're going to dive into the first folder of many on Hobbies. This one is Hobbies Scrapbook. And basically what John Hix would do, and this is how I think the archives started collecting by subject, which has made it a really fun journey to go back and just grab folders by subject. But he started, it looks like in the 30s, kind of late 30s and early 40s, he would put together a bunch of comic strips along a subject, and he called it the John Hix Scrapbook. The first one for Odd Hobbies looks like was 1935, was the first time he collected it, but he did it 5 times. In fact, I think 3 or 4 of them in the same year where he collected these. So we'll use these as the starting point for Odd Hobbies. 1935, we've got Dr. J.M. Bullock from London. He attended 3,000 330 plays. I've got some interesting articles and backup information on him. The play's the thing. He saved every program from every play for 3,333 plays. We've got Emil Kishel's hobby. Now, he saves canes, hundreds from every land, made of almost every known wood. Emil Kishel out of Minneapolis. How about J.H. Jackson from Augusta, Georgia? He's played 35,000 games of solitaire and kept track of every single game, and he's won $30,433 on paper. We've got the Wempner Armstrong and Romondo Davis duo here from St. Louis, Missouri. They've collected 6,000 kinds of match pack covers. That's a heck of a collection. James Frazier, I've actually seen him twice. Uncle John loved this guy. James Frazier from Roxbury, Massachusetts. Got an article in here. Owns 1,200 different kinds of pipes. And then string savers in the Detroit post office. They've collected a 23-mile ball of old string. Weighs 650 pounds. So that's just the beginning. We got 4 more to go. Here we go. So the next up, fast forward to June 1st, 1941. Looks like John Hix did this 4 more times, all in 1941. But here's the first one, and you can see how he collected these. He started in the top left corner saying, "Odd hobbies. Have you an odd hobby? Let's hear about it." And he featured in this one in June of 1941, the human alarm clock. Every morning at 6 o'clock for 10 years, Charlie Hughes has climbed a 20-foot pole to sound a bugle call for his neighbors. I've got a couple of photographs here backing this one up in a handwritten letter. I'm not sure if I lived in Baxter, Tennessee, if Charlie would be one of my favorite people in town, waking me up at 6 o'clock every morning with a bugle call. How about that one? But moving on in this one, we've got James Frazier again, right? The 1,200 pipes. This was about 6 years later. Featured him again, as well as the programs of J.M. Bullock, who we featured before. But there's Jules Charbonneau. He's collected over 25,000 amazing miniature articles from all over the world, including 3,000 silver teaspoons that fit into a hazelnut shell. Crazy. And then we got Clarice Cliff. She creates animals from pottery. Got a really cool photograph or article of her in here as well from Burslem, England. And then Fred Spinden. I saw him featured quite a bit. This guy's amazing. He makes all kinds of things from matches, including like a tea kettle. Check this out. Tea kettle, a skillet. I've got some photographs of these, like the skillet and the tea kettle, all made, crazy enough, from matches. One I missed from the last one in 1935 too. This is a fascinating guy, Sir Neville Wilkinson, the $1 Million Dream hobby. Check this out. He built a $1 million toy palace when the fairy queen Titania commanded him in a dream to build it, from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, crazy enough. But this was featured quite a few times, if you can imagine. In fact, the smallest pipe organ anywhere. It must be played with a matchstick. Titania's Palace. And I love these articles, too, that came in the Illustrated London News. It looked like a lot of facts came. And the great G.K. Chesterton, one of my favorite poems, I actually wrote a screenplay off it about the Battle of Lepanto. Great writer of the time, G.K. Chesterton, but he featured that in our notebook in the Illustrated London News in 1933, on the back of which, isn't that beautiful, of seahorses there. But again, one of these things I would love to frame and put up if I had about 1,000 different walls. But here's the little organ of Titania's Palace, a foot-high instrument, played with a matchstick. Crazy how he would make this incredible dollhouse. Fascinating guy. And all of it came to him in a dream from Titania from Shakespeare. Isn't that crazy? Titania's Palace, England. I wonder if it's still there. Looks like it is. Check it out. Titania's Palace, still there. hand-built in Ireland by James Hix and Sons Irish cabinet makers, commissioned by Sir Neville Wilkinson from 1907 to 1922. Apparently, Wilkinson's daughter, Gwendolen, claimed to have seen a fairy running under the roots of a tree in a wood beside their home at Mount Marion House. It said that Gwendolen felt sorry for the fairies who have to live in caves. Crazy. So there's actually a palace consists of 18 rooms and salons, 4 feet 1 inch tall, built 12-to-1 scale, or 1-to-12. Crazy. Still there today. And another interesting fact here, the underbidders at the London auction were disappointed at Titania's palace being lost to Ireland, and they commissioned a new palace and a dollhouse called Tara's Palace, which is on display in the Tara's Palace Museum of Childhood, located elsewhere in Ireland. But Sir Neville Wilkinson, crazy, in his Titania Palace, Fairy's Dollhouse. Incredible. And yet another John Hix scrapbook of odd hobbies in 1941. This was June 29th, so almost just a month later. Must have been an overwhelming, and it looks like from the files, overwhelming correspondence here. But we have John Moffat, who was a 16-year-old Penn State college student. He collected over 4,000 medals and badges of all kinds. His political badges go all the way back to the Abraham Lincoln campaign. KJ Ruprecht has 300 cigarette lighters, valued, the whole collection, I guess, at $2,000, and they all work. Flea Power motors, how about that? Smaller than match heads, built by Denver Bennett, Struthers, Ohio, as a hobby, powered by flashlight batteries. And I.S. Logan, love this guy, climbed to the top of Mount Rubidoux every morning, rain or shine, for 30 years to ring a bell exactly at 7 o'clock. Got this going back several years, and some really cool letters back and forth from Mr. I.S. Logan, including an Easter sunrise pilgrimage, a program from Riverside, California, on April 13th, 1941. Kind of an eccentric there. And then the Cockroach Derby. This one cracks me up. Owen Lally kept a stable of racing cockroaches. How about that? An electronically operated track. Here's an article from the Detroit News, Sunday, October 22nd, 1933. Crazy. Here we go. Zev 2 is leading Ignatius by a feeler. And Aloysius is a cinch over Big Caesar for show money because Big Caesar is on his back for the moment. Crazy. Yes, they're off. Where? At the Big Cockroach Derby in the basement of the home of an East Detroiter. Crazy, huh? Let's flash forward to August 10th. Later on in 1941, yet more odd hobbies here. There's also the bird that is a hobby. Some beautiful illustrations here, again in the Illustrated London News, about the hobby, which is one of the rarest of English falcons. There's a white man's totem poles. Ray Fogg, Boy Scout commissioner of Lewis, Pennsylvania. He's carved 300 Indian totem poles from 6 inches to 18 feet in height. He does use authentic designs. No two are alike. And how about the transparent cowhorn violin, cornstalk saxophone made by Emil Mattert, Hoyleton, Illinois? Some pretty cool photographs and backup documentation on him. He also has a bull fiddle of bullhide and a flute made from a pig's windpipe. Crazy. We've got a 16-inch caboose built with 4,000 burnt matches by C.E. Self, railroad man, while he was confined to a hospital bed, and he used x-ray plates as the windows. And then Austin McMahon, check it out, Trans-Canada Airlines employee, collects the moths he finds on hangar windows each morning. He's got 29 different varieties of those. Just keeps going on. Don't know if I covered this guy, but here's another bugle man. I'm not sure he made it into a scrapbook or not, but each time he cashes his paycheck, railroad brakeman George Newruther stands in front of the bank and blows an army call on a homemade bugle. He's played it for 28 years in Buffalo, New York. Crazy. And the final John Hix scrapbook, it looks like, from 1941. This was November 23rd. Crazy. How about this one? Otto Getzky. He makes authentic suits of Viking armor. The chainmail is made of 15,000 links of aluminum put together by hand. Here's a photograph to back this one up of Otto Getzky and a couple of letters there of what a hobby that is, right? Authentic Viking armor. There's Frank Littleton from Columbus, Georgia. He's got a collection of 12,000 arrowheads, and they form Indian and animal pictures. Can you imagine collecting 12,000? Oh, and here's a fascinating article on the man, Frank Littleton from Columbus, Georgia, and his collection of 12,000 Indian arrowheads. Here's all the different Indian sculptures he's made with the actual arrowheads, but fascinatingly on the back, this is crazy, a custody fight. I saw something recently like this in a British newspaper, but her estranged husband hurls nightclub singer Bunny Howard to the floor after snatching their daughter from her arms in the New York Supreme Court main lobby. Crazy. This dramatic picture, taken by New York Journal American photographer Clarence Albers, won second prize in the recent editor and publisher photo contest. Tragic sequel of the custody battle was death of the child from nerve exhaustion 3 months later. What a tragedy. Authentic Indian arrowheads, an amazing amount of photographs and letters on that one too. Crazy. And then how about George Keller? This guy really cracks me up. George Keller collects albino animals, just for starters. He has an albino raccoon, a possum, dog, deer, skunk, fox, groundhog, muskrat, porcupine, coyote, and a pair of albino squirrels. How about that? But that's just the tip of the iceberg on this guy. Check it out. Something new in the realm of complex personalities is a man who spends the winter months teaching art and his summers training wild animals. Every June, Professor George Keller, art director of the State Teachers College at Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, steps lightly from the college classroom into the land of sawdust and spangles, and with his troop of 6 assistants, displays his prowess as a lion trainer on some carnival midway. What an odd and eccentric guy this guy was, huh? Professor Keller. And the final 2 from this scrapbook, we've got Clarence Friend from Escondido, California, astronomy hobbyist. He discovered 3 new comets himself within 21 months, and it looks like he's got his own observatory. Here's a letter from the El Amigo Observatorio, Casa de los Amigos, Escondido, California. And then also Florian Schrader from Wheaton, Missouri. She has a collection of 150 toothpick holders. Got some crazy photographs there. And then I found a couple more just in the back here. I don't know that they ever made it into the scrapbook, but this was a pretty interesting guy. Captain E.H. McCran owns 3,000 different war posters from every country in the World War. This is 1935. Obviously before World War II, the most complete collection of its kind in the world. Washington, D.C., got some handwritten letters from that gentleman. How about this final one? Looks like my grandma Elsie Hicks. She married Donald Chamberlain, became my grandma Chamberlain. But Elsie tossed this one in. Looks like from 1953 maybe. Sam Leith. Here's an interesting character. Historic figure of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. As an 8-year-old, he rode the Chisholm Trail. Check that out. And he had a scrapbook file containing 25 million words and prints of historical significance. And probably the most crazy collection of all, the one that probably caught Grandma's eye more than anything. He has a collection of 4,000, strange as it seems, cartoons. Would love to find that collection somewhere. If any of the relatives of Sam Leith are around and still have that, let me know. Perhaps we can make a deal and add it to the Strange as It Seems archives. Well, that does it for this week's episode on Odd Hobbies from the John Hix Scrapbook. Lots more coming in terms of hobbies. We got tons of files to still go through. But if you like content like this on the strange and unusual, eccentric characters from the bygone days, weird, wonderful facts and figures about science, nature, history, art, literature, please hit the bell to subscribe. Leave a like, leave a comment. I respond to every single one. And before I go, I always like to quote my granduncle John Hix, the creator of Strange As It Seems. From the foreword of his first book in 1928, the author launches this book of the curious in nature and humankind on the vast sea of public opinion, with the hope that it will fulfill its mission to entertain and acquaint its readers with some of the marvels of the world in which we live.